Don't mind me, I'm just making a little guide on how to play Tempo Rogue, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. It's going to be broken up into 3 parts as usual. The first one being an overview of the deck, a second one being changes you can make to the deck to make it better, and the third one being mostly just matchups and some mulligans, and basically just general strategies on what to do into certain matchups. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. First thing is an overview of the deck. This is just a pretty standard tempo deck with some pretty good combo potential. Generally, what you want to do if you have the opportunity is try to get an early combo out on the miscreant, whether it be with a coin or a backstab, because before that you don't really have many plays. I personally wanted to have a potential 2-drop or powerful play like re-stabilize the board, so I put in a Defias Ringleader, because if you can backstab and play a 2-drop on turn 2, wipe the guy's board because nothing he's going to play on turn 1 is going to have anything big, then boom, you play Defias Ringleader and you have a 2-2 and a 2-1. That's pretty decent in my opinion. But most of the time, especially if you choose to change the deck a little bit, you probably won't have a 2-drop. So Evil Miscreant and or Hench Clan Thug will be what you use to regain the board on turn 3. Turn 2 will probably be Dagger, unless you have Coin, in which case Coin out Miscreant or SI Agent, or maybe Raiding Party. Keep a combo card if you have the coin. But if you don't have the coin and you're going first, Evil Miscreant with the backstab or Hench Clan Thug if you have the dagger out the turn before are very, very powerful turn 3 plays. And with limited single target removal, Hench Clan Thug can be absolutely huge on turn 3. So generally, you want to look for a turn 3 power spike into hopefully a comboed Raiding Party with either Preparation or Backstab getting it on turn 3 or something. And then being able to play Waggle pick turn 4 with 1, maybe even 2 Dread Corsairs. And if you end up drawing Greenskin as well, pumping up the Wiggle Waggle pick of Doom to get just a little bit more damage out of the card. Change I would make to the deck. The biggest change I would make to the deck is maybe taking out a Defias Ringleader and maybe an Acidic Swamp Ooze for like fans of knives, because that's probably something that you might run into. Token Druid is not the greatest matchup. It's like a 50-50 matchup, and that would help into this matchup. I personally run an Acidic Swamp Ooze because it actually does help against some of the warriors that run Super Collider or the Wrench Caliber. But maybe only run 1 Acidic Swamp Ooze and take out the Ringleader for a fan of knives, just to deal with tokens and wide boards like Merloks. But because Merloks and tokens do exist, if you want to take out both the Acidic Swamp Ooze and the Defias Ringleader, you can totally do that and put in 2 fans of knives. If you want to go a little bit more budget, you don't necessarily need Captain Greenskin. If you want to take out Captain Greenskin for an Acidic Swamp Ooze, so basically the 3 cards, if you're going to take out cards in this deck, it would be Acidic Swamp Ooze, Defias Ringleader, Captain Greenskin if you need the dust, or if you don't have the dust. And the things I would put in are 2 fans of knives and an Acidic Swamp Ooze. So if I only take out 2 cards, it could be like an Acidic Swamp Ooze fan of knives or double fan of knives. If you take out 3 cards, it should probably be 2 fans of knives and an Acidic Swamp Ooze, or maybe a Defias Ringleader if you have the same thought I do with having a way of getting some decent board control starting with turn 2. But yeah, that's really the biggest change I'll make to the deck. Leroy is absolutely huge with the Waggle pick, because you return him to your hand on turn 8. You hit for 6, hit him in the face with the weapon for 4, return Leroy to your hand, hit him for 6 again, and boom, just like that, that's 16 damage. Myra's Unstable Element just draws you your entire deck for options. Those 2 are kind of needed. And Edwin Van Cleef, if you can prep Raiding Party, coin Edwin on turn 3, you basically win the game. You get like an 8-8, and then in like the next turn or 2, you're able to play a weapon into Dread Corsairs and just completely take over the game. So I wouldn't take out Edwin either. The only one I might take out is Greenskin, and I already told you what I'd take it out for, either a Fan of Knives or an Acidic Swamp Ooze. Moving on to specific matchups and mulligans. I'm going to start with the mulligans because I think that is the most important part of the deck just in general. You want to generally keep a backstab and a thug and a miscreant. Those are the 3 biggest things you want to keep. Those are 10 out of 10, keep pretty much every time. If you have a coin, keeping SI Agent... Oh, no, sorry. Also keep Raiding Party pretty much every time. Sorry, so it's Evil Miscreant, Hench Clan Thug, Raiding Party, and Backstab. If you have a coin, it's also okay to keep the SI agent if you don't already have another combo card, just because it's pretty useful. You don't want to keep anything past 4 mana, so the Dread, Corsairs, the Waggle pick, Greenskin, Leroy. You don't want to keep those. Myras, I'll get to that in a second. You sometimes keep that, but again, I'll talk about that in a second. And pretty much everything else, like, is keepable, but I would not recommend it, just because there are definitely better options. Raiding Party, Henchline, Thug, Evil Miscreant, Backstab. If you have Raiding Party in hand, definitely keep Preparation as well, so you can prep that out. Save the prep till turn 3, because you're not actually going to be able to use the weapon until turn 4 anyway. So even if you draw a ton of cards, it's not really going to help you. And it leaves options open for either a Edwin play or potentially another combo play, because you can play prep and a Raiding Party for free. So just, keep your options open. Wouldn't necessarily keep Eviscerate or anything like that. Into some matchups maybe, but I'll get to that in a second. This is just general keeps, so I think I've explained it pretty well. I'm going to go into like more specific things now. Keep Myra's Unstable Element into slow matchups like Control Warrior, Priest, Shaman if it's going Control, even some Paladins if it's not going Secret, which I think more people go Mech Paladin, and you just want that last little oomph. You have a decent amount of early pressure, but you want to draw the cards right at the end if you're not able to close it out. So against like Summon Mage as well, just the slower decks, you want to have Myra's Unstable Element, but against like Token Druid, where you're going to try to burst him down as quickly as possible, it's not necessarily the best keep because you want offensive options, because if it does go late game, you'll probably lose. But in the very slow matchups where it's like, okay, I need to do as much damage as possible, refill my hand, and then do as much damage as possible one last time before you can stabilize, keep it. But not every deck. Like Zulok, you don't do this into. Tempo decks, you don't do this into. And because Merlok Shaman's popular, maybe not into Shaman. Into Rogue, you don't do this. Into Hunter, you don't generally do this. And into Token, because it's an aggro deck and you're just battling for control of the board the whole time, you don't want to waste a turn drawing cards, so I wouldn't go against it either. Basically just Mage, Priest, and Warrior. Next thing that I would potentially keep is Sap. This is against Paladin and Hunter, because sapping them gets rid of the magnetized card on it. So against a Hunter, if they magnetize a Spider Bomb, if you return that to their hand, they lose the Spider Bomb. They'll like get the upgradable Framebot or Mecharoo back to their hand, but they'll lose the Spider Bomb, which means that first of all they lose a lot of tempo because they're losing several cards, but also you're going positive because you're returning a card to their hand, and it's like destroying a minion, and they don't get the death rattle out of it. And I was saying and a lot. It doesn't count for 9 lives either because you returned it to their hand and it technically didn't die. So there are a lot of reasons why Sap is good into that particular matchup, along with Paladin for the same reason as Mech. Sometimes against Mage as well. If they're going Summoner Mage, you want to return something to their hand as quickly as possible so they can't split it up. Like a Mountain Giant, and if their hand is mostly full and you could potentially burn the card, that's also huge. But into matchups like Warrior and like even Warlock and Token Druid that just get either A, wide boards, or B, don't play that many minions to begin with, it's a bit rough. Against Shaman, it could potentially be okay if you want to get rid of like the War Leader and then try to regain control of the board off of that, but even then, you want to go face, and if he's not going to play a taunt or anything, you don't need the sap unless you want to sap it to potentially keep yourself from dying, or trade in if you absolutely have to. On top of that, you have Deadly Poison. Deadly Poison is good into some matchups that you think are going to get some pretty early aggression out. Like, again, I like it into Hunter because if they play something like a Mecharoo and then a Spider Bomb magnetized to it, the dagger gets rid of both of them. You don't necessarily lose a minion. Same basic thing goes for Paladin because they have some early upgrades as well, but and you can deal with the board fairly early. It's also a decent combo proc on like turn 4 if you need that. It's pretty good against Merlok Shaman because no Murlocs have more than 3 health, but there are a couple with 3 health, like the War Leader and the one that the 2/3. Amalgam has 4. That's a bit of a rough situation, but that's not important. It's good into basically the wider boards where you want to keep control, because you can keep control of it without losing minions, and you get to control the board 2 times. So, like, even Token Druid is pretty decent against as well. I'm trying to think if you want anything else here, and other than that, I think that about covers the specific mulligans. And I've kind of gone into the strategies of each one, but I'm going to go through the most popular decks real quick and just how to beat them, or at least how maybe not to lose. Against Druid, you have Heal Druid. You can just plow face on that. It's not even really a problem. Token Druid, on the other hand, you still want to go face, but if you have the dagger, and like I said with Deadly Poison, you sometimes want to trade into his minion so he doesn't get too wide of a board. You want to try to control the size of his board. Like, try to always keep in mind, like, Savage Roar could do this much damage to me, or like Savage Roar Power of the Wild could do this much damage to me. I want to try to like deal with this board or develop my board in a way to where if he does have both of those, I won't necessarily lose, which means usually it means using your dagger to kill off some 1/1 sometimes. As long as you don't have a 4/2 weapon, using the daggers to control the board is actually pretty decent. Dread Corsairs as soon as possible. Sometimes just dropping cards, even if you don't necessarily want to get the combo out of it, like Defias Ringleader or Acidic Swamp Ooze. I know that's not a combo, but you know you still need to drop the card to get some tempo. And then also on top of that, the Evil Miscreant's pretty helpful into that matchup just in general, because the fact that you get lackeys that potentially help you deal with a wide board. And other than that, you just hope that he's not able to develop a wide board before then. You can control it a little bit. You can backstab some of his minions. Sometimes you need to backstab without a combo just so you don't lose. But for the most part, just continue to go face. It shouldn't be too big of a problem. But again, yeah, Fan of Knives would also really help in this matchup because you could even better keep the guy from developing a board. But if you're using this particular list, basically you just need to throw things on the board and try to keep him from having control using your dagger and go face with minions, basically. If you're on Fan of Knives, though, hold on to that. You don't want to just drop that on like a couple of minions. You want to save it for if he plays like Whispering Woods on turn 4. Next one is Hunter. Most of the Hunters you beat. Mech Hunter is honestly just a bit too slow. And if you do sap the things when he magnetizes, it's such a huge hit. They lose so much value in terms of mana and cards that off of that alone, you can gain enough tempo to close out a game. Basically, you beat pretty much every single matchup, I think, except like the Spell/Secret Hunter version. That could have like Explosive Trap or Freeze Trap or Discover a Trap or whatever. And if he does that, then you could be in trouble because Explosive Trap or Freeze Trap basically negates the Leroy Jenkins combo, which is not good for you at all. But other than that, as long as he doesn't have Freeze Trap, you can just plow face and things won't get too out of control, honestly. I think that you should be able to maintain control of the board and just go face hard enough to where it shouldn't be that big of a problem. Mage is so slow you can just go face. However, with the Summon Mage, or the Kadar Mage, I'm sorry, if he gets out an early Mountain Giant, if you have sap, you have to sap it. Because if the next turn, if he Conjures Callings it and gets a Grave Horror, you basically lose the game. It's going to take so many resources to get over that 7/8 taunt, let alone if he gets 2, that you're just going to lose the game. So you need to go face and sap Mountain Giant if he plays it. Priest is easy. Just go face. Silence Priest, you can get cheesed sometimes, but like that's not that big of a deal. Occasionally you'll get cheesed, but for the most part, just go face. Rogue, basically it just depends on who gets Raiding Party first, and you want to try to play around his Raiding Party. Like if he plays Raiding Party and he plays his stuff, if you play Raiding Party second, like an immediate response, and you can use your weapon to kill one of his Dread Corsairs, that could be big. With my Acidic Swamp Ooze, if you could somehow like make him return a minion to his hand with your Acidic Swamp Ooze by killing his weapon, that could be big. But really, it depends on who can get combos out earlier. If someone can get a huge Edwin out right away, that's huge. And a Raiding Party is also super important. It's just really reliant on combos and who can get tempo on the board first. Zulok is not too big of a problem because you have the dagger and the weapon, so you can kill off a lot of his 1/1s. And the rush minions don't really affect you that much because if he rushes and goes face, okay. If he rushes and goes face, and he can't go face. If he rushes, he can't go face, is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of the times, you keep minions in your hand. Like for the Leroy Jenkins combo, you're actually holding 16 damage in your hand. Okay, so you don't really need to worry about him using his rush to kill off your minions. It's different than Token Druid, because Token Druid, he can kill off your minions with his rush. With Rogue, you just want to try to get tons of damage, and then once he gets the magic carp out, if you can't kill it, just hold some rush and some burst damage in your hand and try to close it out as soon as possible right after that. Shaman, you got Merlok Shaman. Merlok Shaman's not that bad. You got the backstab. You got some eviscerates to kill off some of the bigger threat Murlocs, like backstab, dagger, or deadly poison onto the dagger to hit like the 3/3 war leader. If you kill the war leader, he loses a ton of tempo. Also, that combo can kill the angler, which means it limits how many cards he can draw. And you get so much tempo so quickly, and he has 0 taunt that you can kind of just close out a game. Worst matchup is Warrior. This is one where you kind of need the Acidic Swamp Boost sometimes if he's going control and he has if he has the Super Collider. Even the Wrench Caliber is rough. But really, the only way you beat this is if you get the nuts. If you just try to go face and then dump as many cards on the board as quickly as possible to do as much damage as you possibly can, and then Myra's Unstable Element, because this is a matchup you keep it in, and then you hope that you get enough cards to either A, burst him down, or B, get in a position where you can have a lethal in the next few turns. Because if the game goes past like turn, I'll say turn like 8 or 9, 8 because that's the Leroy Waggle pick Leroy combo for 16 damage. If he lives past turn 8 to turn 10, somewhere in that range, loosely, depending on how good your hand is, you're probably going to lose. Definitely if it's past turn 10. If he gets a 10 mana, you basically lose because he gets a Mega Assembly and the deal 10 damage 4/5 for 4. I forgot what it's called. The Omega Devastator, I think. If he gets a 10 mana, you're done. But if you somehow beat him before turn 9, and if you still have coin, you somehow, for some reason, kept it. Also, coin, use that pretty much every single time as soon as you can. Like, whenever you can. Even if it's just to gain tempo and you don't even use it for a combo and you feel like you absolutely need to. That's not even bad. But you should use it before turn 10. But if you're on turn like 9 or 10 and you want to use it to get just a little more value, fine, that's fine too. But if you don't have coin, by turn 9, if you haven't won yet, you're probably going to lose just because you get so much value out of Omega Assembly and stuff that you're just not going to be able to do anything. And all of them run Omega Assembly and Dr. Boom, so really, if they get to that point, you're like almost 100% going to lose the game. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask me. I like making these in-depth guides. I think they're pretty cool, and this deck is a little more complex than just go face. There's some nice little combos you need to know. Keeping is sometimes a little bit confusing because some things are valued over others. Giving you some changes you can make to the deck, potentially make it more budget, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. See ya.